Welcome to The Authentic Path, where we explore the intersection of leadership, performance science, and ancient wisdom. I'm your host, Dr. Vanessa Calderon. I'm a Harvard-trained physician and healer with over 20 years of leadership and business development experience. I blend science and ancestral wisdom with proven strategies to help you get the results you desire in work and in life without losing yourself along the way. Let's get started. Hi, friends. Welcome back to the podcast. So we are picking up today where we left off last week. So if you remember, we're doing this series on how elite athletes and coaches, and of course, underdogs, because underdogs are my favorite, how they think differently, what their mindset is to really help you grow with ease and with a little less resistance, to make your growth easier, really simpler, to really think about different ways to think about growth and how to focus on your next level. So last week, we started with elite athletes, and I highlighted 5 different mindsets or different ways that they think. We talked about process over outcome, and we talked about Kobe Bryant and Michaela Schifrin. We talked about training the mind and thinking differently, and we used the examples of Michael Phelps and Elisa Liu, the figure skater. We talked about failure and how to approach failure, and we talked about Michael Jordan and Simone Biles. And we ended last week talking about regulating your nervous system, and we used the example of Allison Felix. So we're just going to jump right in and finish. So we did 5 last week. 1, 2, 3. No, we did 4. Okay, that means we got 6 to go. So we're going to do 5 through 10 today. So let's jump in. What are we starting with today? So when I was creating this list, I wanted the ways of thinking, the ways of being to really be front and center. But I also wanted the athletes that we represented and that I used as examples to come from various different sports and various different diverse backgrounds. And one of my besties is a huge tennis fan. I did not grow up playing tennis or watching tennis, although now I do love it because it turns out it's one of those sports you can play until you get very, very old. So it's a great one to pick up when you're older. What we're talking about today is the first one. We're jumping into the first lesson, how to think differently and accelerate your growth and really practice excellence by focusing on self-awareness and reflection. And the examples we're going to use are Novak Djokovic and Katie Ledecky. So Novak Djokovic is a tennis player. And yes, I had to look up how to pronounce his last name because he's Serbian and I didn't know how to say that. And Katie Ledecky. So let's jump in. Okay, so when you look at Novak Djokovic, he's a professional tennis player. And of course, yes, he's incredibly skilled. But what I think really sets him apart and why I included him in this episode is not because of how physically skilled he is, but about how deeply he studies himself. And not just his serve or his footwork, but his internal state. And there's this super cool book on tennis. I can't remember the title right now, but I actually bought it for my girlfriend, the same one that loves tennis, because what it actually does is it helps you think differently about the game. And this is what I actually really appreciated when I learned this about Novak, which is this, that he studies his internal state. He's known for paying attention to not just his footwork when he's out there doing drills, but he pays attention to when his focus drifts away during a match. So he's out there playing a game, but if his mind goes to something else, he's known to pay attention and to bring himself back to the present moment. He's known to pay attention for how he responds emotionally after losing a point. Pay attention to that and regulate himself. So we talked last week and we ended last week with the sense of nervous system regulation. And you can't really regulate yourself in real time if you don't have self-awareness. And the other thing he's really known for is he pays attention to what thoughts come up for him under pressure. And I think this is so powerful. And in fact, I talk about this with my clients all of the time, that one of the most important things for us to do is to be aware that we are not our thinking brains. And so I give my clients a bunch of tools that I teach them and practice with them so that they can separate themselves from their thinking brain. Because oftentimes we walk around thinking thoughts, and then those thoughts sort of create our reality. And we think those thoughts must be true. Those thoughts are just the truth because we're thinking them, and we're so wrapped up. If you're watching this on YouTube, you can see this, my right hand is over my left hand right now, and my right hand is the brain, my left hand is myself, and we are so wrapped up that we think we are our thinking brain. But when we practice self-awareness, we can pull ourselves apart and we can observe and notice what we are thinking and feeling and not be consumed by it. So one of the things Novak is known for is, and he speaks about all the time, is how he focuses on his mindset, his breath, to bring himself back to the present moment, and meditation. And, meditation is one of those other things that is super common in the common vernacular. People talk about it all the time. And I'm so grateful that people are doing that because it really, really does work. It creates a sense of inner calmness, inner peace, and really supports you in creating self-mastery. And he does this because he understands that performance is not just physical, it's mental and it's emotional. And it's also energetic. Like, how are you feeling in your body? What is my internal state reflecting about my external state? Because one of the oldest truths that has been found in one of the oldest texts that's ever been published is, as above, so below, as within, so without. So what is my internal state? Because that's what I'm going to be reflecting outwards. So he's not just training his body. He's training his mind, his emotions, and his spirit. And then the other athlete is Katie Ledecky. She's an Olympic swimmer. And what really stands out about her isn't just that she's incredible at winning, because she is, but it's how she wins. There's this sense of consistency to her. So she's known for repeating the same training sets over and over again with precision and tracking her times meticulously. She stays deeply focused on incremental improvement. So she has this level of self-awareness and calmness where there's no drama to it. I'm here, I'm doing the same drills over and over again. I'm here to just get a little bit better every day, 1% improvement every day. There's no story, no narrative, no drama. I don't have to constantly be reinventing myself. I just have a deep commitment to doing the small things exceptionally well, over and over and over again. I think that's huge. And I want to bring this back to you now, because if you're a leader or if you're an entrepreneur, physician, professional, someone who is really used to performing at a high level, we've likely been taught to focus on things like the outcome, the strategy, the efficiency. But what these athletes are showing us is that there's something so much deeper that's directly related to our growth, and that's our level of self-awareness. And I really think about it as self-awareness, but also self-mastery. And not self-mastery in a rigid sense, or self-mastery because we don't think we're good enough, but self-mastery because I want to be connected to something greater than me, a higher level of consciousness. And I know that my thinking brain is not the truth. I know that I have an inner wise woman. You have an inner sage inside of you. And that inner sage is where, when our self-awareness gets turned on, that inner sage is what we get to connect to, that gets to direct us. And that's really, really beautiful and really powerful. It supports us in our ability to notice when we're getting triggered in a meeting, when we start to doubt ourselves. So before we make a decision based on the self-doubt, we can notice that. Or when we're avoiding something because it feels uncomfortable. And I know so many of us do that. We use all of these techniques to avoid. We go eat a brownie or have a glass of wine to avoid something that feels uncomfortable. And what we can do is, instead of pushing past those things or ignoring them, what if you studied them? What if you studied them? What if you became a student to yourself? If you were just like genuinely curious and fascinated with the way you thought and felt and how you approached things? What if you approached your own patterns the way that Djokovic studies his matches, or approached your work the way Katie Ledecky approaches her training? Not with judgment, but with the level of curiosity and with the willingness to refine, to get better at. In leadership, I took a class in one of my master's programs, and we learned something really important. We learned that when we experience a crisis, we're never supposed to waste it. Don't waste a crisis. And I think about that with COVID, because COVID was a huge crisis. And what it did is it supported us. I was an emergency department chair at the time, and COVID really gave us a lot of capital. It gave the emergency department capital because we were experiencing tremendous amount of crises at the time. And we were able to get the resources that we needed, the support that we needed. And that was different than what we've had before. And so you never want to waste a crisis. And when I think about my coaching work and what I tell my clients, so this might sound familiar if you're one of my clients, but what I tell my clients is never waste a trigger. Anytime you noticed that you're getting triggered, frustrated, annoyed, get curious about it. What is it there to teach you? Because the truth is that at higher levels of performance, it's never going to be a strategy that is holding you back. It's never going to be a strategy. It's always going to be subtle patterns. The way you think, the way you respond to things, the way you relate to pressure. And when you begin to see those things clearly, that's when everything starts to shift for you. Okay, so that's self-awareness. Okay, number 6 is what we can learn from these elite athletes is environment is everything. Your environment and who you surround yourself with really matters. So I have 2 examples for you here. LeBron James, the basketball player, and Alex Morgan, the soccer player. So LeBron, professional basketball player, number 23 after MJ, Michael Jordan, has built an entire ecosystem around him of trainers, of coaches, and of support systems. And Alex Morgan, professional soccer player and World Cup champion, also thrives in this team culture where excellence is shared. So what's important here to note is that neither of them try to do what they do by themselves. They're not trying to do it alone. And I think that this is something incredibly important and that we also underestimate in our spaces in leadership and business and performance. We think we have to figure it all out by ourselves. We think we have to do it all by ourselves, or we're weak, or we're supposed to figure it out by ourselves. I should just go read a book. I should just go listen to a podcast, especially when it comes to self-mastery or all of the things that I sort of teach on this podcast. I've had so many clients come to me and tell me, I've tried all these things and it's not working. Well, a big reason is we're not meant to figure this stuff on our own. And in fact, Albert Einstein once said that you cannot approach or solve a problem from the same level of consciousness that created that problem. So when you're trying to figure out like, why am I still stuck? Or why am I experiencing burnout again? Or why can't I break this pattern? Sometimes you need support from a professional. Sometimes you need support from someone who can look at the problem differently and support you with different types of solutions. That's what LeBron does, and that's what Alex Morgan does. And you can do that too. And in fact, I would love to help you. If you are looking for this type of support, I work one-on-one with professionals, with leaders, with entrepreneurs, with physicians, with engineers, with lawyers, with high-functioning leaders and professionals. And I can help you break through whatever's keeping you stuck to your next level. Okay, so when we think about this, when we think about not doing this by ourselves, one of the things that really matters is the community that you surround yourself with, the people around you, the conversations that you're having, the energy that you allow into your auric field, the standards that you're exposing yourself to. Because what happens is it all shapes what feels possible for you. And what feels possible for you is going to create your future. Because if you don't think it's possible, your mind isn't even going to go there. But the more you can expose yourself to people doing the things you want to be doing, the more things become possible for you. This is a big reason why I am constantly surrounding myself with people who inspire me. I put myself in environments with people doing really big, crazy, audacious things because I want to do them too. And I want to see what's possible. And I want that to be normal. I want to normalize that in my nervous system because that's what I want to do too. And this is why all of the programs that I run have a community component to them, because I think it's incredibly important for all of us, especially really high-functioning folks who have been doing everything on their own for so long, to know that they don't have to do it alone anymore. Community is so important, and it's why so many of our programs are effective. In fact, they've published so much literature on coaching, and coaching, of course, it's evidence-based. It works, period. It works. You can go do a quick literature search on PubMed or Google, and you can find all of these articles that prove that coaching is highly, highly, highly effective. With the good coach, you get incredible results. And what's really incredible is that there's a ton of data that's being published over the last 3 to 4 years to show that group coaching with leaders, with entrepreneurs, with professionals is equally effective. And I think that's incredible because so many leaders are afraid to be coached because what if they don't want to be vulnerable in front of other people? They're afraid. And I run group coaching programs with leaders. And what I have seen is that what happens in those tight-knit communities, especially if you have someone that holds a really special container where they make the vulnerability feel safe, is the results of the folks in there just skyrocket because they realize they're not alone. And they can release a lot of whatever was holding them back, the shame or the stuckness, because they see like, I'm not the only one having this problem. And that's really powerful. Okay. Environment matters. Next, number 7, protect your energy. Elite athletes, people that are constantly looking for growth or for what's next, they protect their energy. So I'm going to talk about Roger Federer here. When you look at Roger Federer, a tennis player, what's really fascinating is that later on in his career, he actually wasn't trying to do more. Like, what else can I do? What else can I do? He was focusing on doing less. He became incredibly intentional about which tournaments he played, about when he rested, about how he structured his recovery. There were times where he skipped major events, not because he couldn't compete, he could have, but because he understood something deeper, that longevity requires restraint. Excellence requires restraint. Your joy, your fulfillment, your success requires restraint. It requires trusting that doing less and doing those things better will actually create more over time. This is something I really had to create peace with because I love doing a lot and I love doing more. And I also have an entrepreneurial mind and spirit, and I love creating. I wanted to create. And what I realized is I didn't have to do everything at the same time. I can just go slow, focus on one thing at a time, make it excellent, and grow from there. And that level of restraint it's a discipline. It's a muscle that we get to build, and it's available for all of us. And speaking of protecting your energy, did y'all know that LeBron James sleeps 10 hours a night? He doesn't just sleep 10 hours a night because he knows how important his recovery is. And this is, by the way, before he became one of the oldest people to play basketball still in the NBA. And it takes a lot out of your body to be playing at that intensity. But even before he became the oldest, he was still focusing on his body and mind, how he can protect his sacred energy. Sleeping 10 hours a night, has a regular meditation practice, is super intentional about the food he puts in his body. And that's really powerful. And I want to just pause here for a second because I think that this is incredibly relevant for you, for all of you listening. I don't think that we have enough conversations about what it means to protect our sacred energy. And it's so important because if you are a leader, an entrepreneur, if you're a physician, if you are any high-functioning person, you were likely trained in environments where pushing yourself was normalized. And I actually want to name the sort of the tension here because I think there's a healthy level of us pushing ourselves to see what's possible when it is aligned with our values and we are being intentional about it. The difference is when we're doing it out of inadequacy, insufficiency, we don't think we're good enough, external validation, everybody else is doing it. I think that's what I'm supposed to do. If I don't do it, are they going to think I'm a failure? That's two really different energies that are driving you. So most of us, we were trained in environments where we pushed ourselves because pushing ourselves was normalized, because that's what everybody was doing. That's what we thought we had to do to succeed, because we were praised for working incredibly long hours. Because we were praised for not resting, because we equated resting with being lazy. And we didn't really honor our capacity. Instead, we were constantly pushing. And so many of us learned how to perform really well under immense amount of pressure. And maybe you didn't learn how to care for yourself in those moments. And so what often happens is we get to a point where, holy smokes, that doesn't work for me anymore. That causes burnout and exhaustion. And now I have so many other things to think about. It's not just me. It's me and my significant other or my kids or my home or my mortgage. Hold on a second. I can't keep pushing myself at that same level. I am no longer creating joy or happiness. It's becoming sometimes pathologic. Like I'm having physical sensations in my body from doing that. So here's the subtlety that I want to offer you, which I think is really, really important because we all have this incredible capacity to create and to do more, but you can do that from a place of deep alignment to your values, deep alignment to what you want to create. And you can respect that capacity and you can essentially continue to steward that energy thoughtfully. Of course, you need to rest. Of course, you need to protect your energy. Of course, you need to protect your mind. And think about what becomes possible for you when you do. Because when you protect your energy, well, first, let's talk about what happens when you don't protect your energy. When you don't protect your energy, your decision-making is really reactive instead of thoughtful and intentional. Your creativity starts to kind of narrow down. You're not as innovative. Your patience becomes short. You're like short with people, maybe your kids, maybe your clients or your patients. And over time, you start to feel like you're carrying a big weight on your back, and not because you're doing things wrong, but because you're doing them from a place of depletion. And this, I think, is where we can learn a lot from folks that really protect their sacred energy, because you have to realize that recovery is not separate from your performance. Recovery is part of your performance. It should be part of your strategic plan in life. There has to be rest days built in as part of your training plan, as part of the things that you're doing to be successful. You have to build in rest days. One of my favorite teachers and coaches, Dan Sullivan, he is so thoughtful when he's coaching folks to really multiply and grow at a really, really high level. He tells them, he'll say, hold on a second, let me look at your week. Oh, I see your week, and listen, you're working too much. You've got to step back here. You have to have a day to rest, to recover before you can keep going, and really thinking about it like a performance athlete. And sleep has to be part of your strategy. That has to be part of your rest day, as do boundaries. And I have a lot of podcast episodes on boundaries, so you can go back and Google the episodes on boundaries, and I'll link a few in the show notes here. But it's really important for you to think about rest and recovery as part of your performance plan. So it might look like saying no to something, even if you had the capacity to say yes, just because you wanted to protect your sacred energy, creating white space in your calendar just so that you could protect your energy. Really give yourself time to recover, and notice when your body is asking for rest and really honoring it, not as a reward because you work so hard, but as a requirement to really sustain the level of performance that you want to create. Okay. I'm going to go on now. Number 8, número 8. Number 8 is identity over goals. And here I really think about identity as self-belief over goals. And I'm going to use Serena Williams here as an example. It's funny. I was like, I don't have enough tennis players. And now the last 3 have been tennis players examples. But I can't do an episode on elite athletes and not include Serena Williams. She is the bomb. All right, so let's talk about Serena Williams, one of the greatest tennis players of all time. And what's so powerful about her isn't just her titles or her wins, it's how she carried herself through decades and decades of pressure and scrutiny and expectation. She didn't just achieve excellence, she did that, but she also embodied at a really, really young age a level of self-belief that wasn't seen. Even in moments when other people doubted her or when she was losing, she had this ability to deeply believe in herself. So if you guys have seen the movie about the Williams sisters and their dad, King Richard, where Will Smith plays King Richard, there's this really powerful scene in the movie where she's being interviewed, and she's at a really young age, already an excellent tennis player. And I can't remember the exact question he asks, but the interviewer, it's for a news channel, asks her if she's afraid she's going to lose. And she's like, no, of course I'm going to win. And she is saying that with a huge level of certainty and self-belief. And it doesn't even look like arrogance. It's just like certain, like, no, of course that's such a silly question. Of course I'm going to win. And he keeps trying to find different ways to create self-doubt in her. But what about this? But you've never played this. But what about? And she just is firm in her self-belief. And then eventually her dad, King Richard, has to step in and say, hey, she already answered your question. You don't have to try to create doubt. Let's move on. But point is, she had a level of self-belief that was incredibly powerful at a young age. And if you guys watch the Benito Bowl, the Super Bowl with Bad Bunny, there was this time, if you don't speak Spanish, I'll translate it for you. But there's this time in the Super Bowl halftime show where the camera zooms right in on him and he starts talking in Spanish and he says, "The reason why I'm standing here in front of you at the Super Bowl is because I never stopped believing in myself, and you shouldn't either." And I think self-belief is just, it's fascinating and it's an important muscle for us to continue to practice over and over and over again. And I feel super, super blessed and fortunate because I grew up with a mom who just believed everything was possible. I never once heard my mom say that's impossible. She believed everything was possible. And I just think that's so important for us because can you imagine the type of world we would be living in if every child believed that everything was possible? That's powerful. So I think this is where this becomes important for you too, because I think most high performing folks are taught, again, to operate from outcome or goal. We're taught to ask, what do I need to get done? What's the next milestone? What strategy is going to get me there the fastest? What do I need to accomplish? And yes, goals matter, but they don't by themselves create the sustainable change or who we need to be inside to make that successful. What does that for us is identity. Your identity is what creates your alignment. So when you're operating from goals, it may often feel like I have to make myself do this, or I need more discipline, or I just need to push through. And that takes a lot of energy and friction. But when you shift into an identity of course I'm going to do it, of inevitability, of certainty, the question becomes, of course I can do this. It's just who I am. And then everything starts to feel a little bit easier. Your habits become more natural, your decisions become clearer, your consistency becomes easier. And it's not because it doesn't require effort. It's because now there's a deep alignment with what you're doing and who you believe yourself to be. And I just think that's really, really powerful. And this is where I think I see a lot of leaders and entrepreneurs get stuck. They're trying to build a new level of success with an old identity. I coached one of my clients today and she's like, I just feel stuck. I feel trapped. And I was like, well, that identity is going to keep you stuck and trapped. That's not going to help you. And really identifying that and seeing that as your belief, as what you believe about yourself. So you might have an identity that you procrastinate, that you're not consistent, that you always struggle, that you don't trust yourself. So you might still be able to achieve your goals, but it's going to take so much effort that you might be exhausted and burnt out by the time you do that. And what athletes like Serena show us is that at some point, you have to just decide who you are, not based on your past, not based on your current results, but based on who you are deciding to become. So instead of asking, what do I need to do to reach this goal? You might want to ask, who do I get to be? Or who is the version of me that already lives this way? Okay, let's go on. I have 2 more. Number 9. Oh man, I really considered shortening these down because I was like, this is getting long. But 9 and 10 are so good. I don't want to leave them out. So number 9 is that the concept that I want you to take away here is discomfort is the way. Discomfort is the currency to the goals that you want, to the life that you want. Discomfort is the path. So I'm going to use the example of Candace Parker. She's a professional WNBA player. And I use her example because her career hasn't always been linear. She's had to navigate injuries and transitions between teams and shifts in her role from being primary star to playing a more supportive role. And what stands out is her willingness to evolve, to let go of who she used to be. Letting go of who you used to be is very uncomfortable because you have to live in uncertainty. But that uncertainty and that discomfort, that's the way. Because what she had to do is become who her team and what her life was asking her to be next. And that's really uncomfortable. And I'll bring this back to all of you now because discomfort doesn't always look like a physical discomfort, like running an ultra marathon. Discomfort can look like saying the thing that you are avoiding to say or making the decision you need to make without full certainty. I know I need to transition out of this job, but I don't know what's next. I know I need to have this difficult conversation and it's going to feel super uncomfortable. or letting yourself be seen at a bigger level. What I've come to understand is that all of us want to be seen, especially entrepreneurs and leaders. We want to be seen. We want that bigger level for ourselves, but we're also human. And we're really afraid of humiliation and rejection and judgment. So even though we want to be seen, there's parts of us that are keeping us safe and keeping us small. And we avoid that discomfort by staying small. So it could be outgrowing an identity, a role, or even a version of success that once felt right for you, but now it's time to move on. So discomfort in this way is pretty subtle, but it's also incredibly powerful. And here's what I think is really important. Our human brains are wired, of course, to avoid discomfort, because think about your biological wiring. Back in the day, discomfort could mean death. So we are wired to seek safety, what's familiar. And so when you feel resistance, when something feels hard or uncomfortable, our instinct is always to interpret that as something is wrong. This must not be for me. I must not be ready for this. But no, no, no. What if discomfort is not like this, a signal that something's wrong? If it's a signal that you're growing, that you're expanding, because that's what discomfort is. And I talked about regulating your nervous system last week. So I'm just going to name that again. The more we can sit with discomfort and relax our bodies into it, the more of what becomes possible for us. Because when you look at athletes, whether it's Candace Parker navigating identity shifts or somebody else, what they do is they don't interpret discomfort as danger. They interpret it as part of the process. I was thinking about that today. I was running intervals, and I run intervals on Fridays. And I had these podcast episodes, a series that I'm working on. I had it fresh in my mind. And I got to a point in my intervals where my body felt tired. And I had this little thought in my head that was like, oh, you just need to slow down and take a break. Your body's not ready for it. You didn't sleep enough last night, because I went to an NBA playoff game last night. And so we got home late. And I was like, so fascinating, all the things my mind is offering me to slow down. And then I was like, but I know what's possible. I know the infinite capacity I have to create and to do. And I know that if I was being chased by a bear right now, I would run so fast, even though I'm at the tail end of my interval. So I'm going to keep going and push harder. And I wasn't doing that because I didn't feel adequate or not good enough. And I wasn't doing that because I was trying to prove something to myself. I was doing that because I wanted to show myself what was possible. And it felt really awesome. At the end, I was like, yep, look at that. Incredible. Even though my mind was offering me those things, look at what is possible. Even though I felt uncomfortable, look at what's possible when you keep going and you move through the discomfort. And I think that there's, a difference when it comes to thinking about discomfort as having to always push. It's not about pushing. I think it's about allowing. It's about allowing the discomfort to be present and doing the actions anyway. It's like the Nike logo, just do it. It's about allowing the discomfort to be there and taking the action anyway. That's the kind of discomfort I'm talking about. It's that sense of stretching yourself when things feel uncomfortable. Okay, last one, number 10. Number 10, I love, and I think it's a great way to end this, which is focus on playing the long game. It's not about your success tomorrow. It's about the long game of life. It's the infinite game of life that we're playing here. And I'm going to talk about Tiger Woods in this example, because I haven't talked about a golfer yet. And Tiger Woods is an incredible golfer. So when you look at Tiger Woods, his career hasn't been one of this continuous upward trajectory. It's been about chapters. There were moments of incredible dominance, but also moments of injury and moments of stepping away and moments of returning, older, different, wiser. And what stands out isn't just his success, it's his willingness to rebuild, to not come back as that same version of himself, but instead as someone who has adapted. And that requires patience. It requires a deep trust in the long game. And it requires humility. And this is something I want to reflect back to you, because I think most of us in the game of life, especially our high achieving, these brains that we have, we feel like everything is urgent. I want that next goal tomorrow. And listen, man, I'm an ER doc by training, so talk about urgency. I'm hyper urgent all the time, or I used to be anyway. And so It's really important to shift that because we have to release the fact that we want something tomorrow. Because anytime we are feeling that urgency, what is actually happening is that we are resisting the present moment. Something in this present moment doesn't feel good, doesn't feel settled. I don't feel successful enough. I feel like I'm lacking. I feel inadequate. So I need to hurry up and get to that next level because I think I'm going to feel better when I get there. And that sense that you should be further along by now, that urgency, while it can feel motivating, it also is resistance. And what you resist in this present moment, my friends, as Carl Jung says, will persist. What you resist will persist. And it creates a state of constant chasing what's next, never feeling settled or at peace or in joy or happiness with the present moment. And that creates it trains our mind to always be looking outside of ourselves for fulfillment, for joy, for happiness. And when you study people who have sustained growth and excellence over time, they understand that it's not about these quick wins. It's not about proving something quickly or compressing timelines all the time at all costs. They're building something greater, something that lasts, something that can hold growth and reinvention and change. And I think that's super powerful. And so for you, it might look like a shift from how fast can I get there to what am I creating over time? Because I think here's the truth, that when you rush the process, yes, you will likely get short-term results, but you often don't build the foundation required to sustain those results over time. And that's where burnout happens, where success can feel very fragile, where you reach a milestone, but you can't even celebrate it. You can't even really hold it because you're looking for what's next all the time. So I think a lesson we can take from Tiger Woods is what would be possible if we were willing to invest in the long game? What would be possible for us? Okay, see, friends, we covered a lot of stuff. So quick summary. We talked today about self-awareness and reflection with Djokovic and Katie Ledecky. We talked about how important your environment is and that your environment matters. And we used the examples of LeBron James and Alex Morgan. We talked about protecting your sacred energy. And I used Roger Federer as that example, as well as LeBron, who leaps a ton, meditates, makes sure that he's taking care of his body and feeding himself very healthy foods. We talked about the concept of identity and self-belief. We used Serena Williams as an example. Discomfort as the path, really letting yourself be uncomfortable and being okay with that. We talked about Candace Parker, and then focusing on the long game with Tiger Woods. Okay, so as you take all of this in, I want you to remember that your growth is never just about a strategy. It's not just about a process. It's about how you think, how you feel, how you respond, how you care for yourself, and how you stay in the process over the outcome, especially when things feel uncomfortable or slow or uncertain, because in that space, that right there is where real transformation comes from. And let me tell you this. I said this in the middle of the episode. I'm going to say it again. You don't have to figure all of this out on your own. We are not meant to go through these things by ourselves. And as Albert Einstein said, we cannot solve a problem from the same level of consciousness that created it. This kind of growth, this deep inner transformational work, this identity shift, the way you relate to pressure and performance, it's nuanced. And it's often difficult to see the patterns clearly from inside your own head. This is exactly the work I do with my clients. I work one-on-one with professionals, with leaders, with entrepreneurs who are deeply committed to their growth, to their next level of their business, to their next level of their profession. And we do both the external work and the internal work. And so if this is something that's calling you, I would love to work with you. I would love to help you. You can schedule a consult with me and we can understand all of the things, all of the patterns that are holding you back, and really talk about what's possible for you moving forward. So you can schedule a consult with me. The link to schedule the consult is in the show notes. Okay, and I'm going to leave you with a few questions here. Number one, where am I trying to force an outcome instead of just trusting the process? Number two, how do I respond when things don't go as planned for me? Number three, what would it look like to care for my energy, my sacred energy, as much as I care for my ambition and my goals? Ooh, that's a good one. And the last one is, who am I becoming through all of this? All right, sweet friends, if this is resonating with you, please share this podcast. Please share this show, this YouTube channel, if you're on YouTube, with someone who you know would benefit from this, because that's how we grow this community of conscious leaders, of conscious humans walking this planet. And of course, I would love for you to leave us a review and a rating that helps others find us as well. And here I am to hold you with so much love as I say adios, and I see you next week. Adios, sweet friends. Hey, friends, if this episode resonated, please take a quick second and leave a review, share it with a friend, or post it to your community. It's how we keep helping others who are walking a similar path, and how together we grow the movement of consciousness in business, leadership, and life. Thank you again for being here, and I'll see you next week.